Kirk, I ran into someone at a family get together in the last few months, and we started talking training theories. He was a runner and has gotten back into running, and we just started talking about how we were trained in high school and then college and then what's popular now. And it made me want to talk about that with you.
Okay.
And that's what I want to do today. I'm getting right into it because this is one of the episodes that could go long, and we have that ability oftentimes in our episodes. But I want to talk about some of the most prevalent training styles used, what levels they're used at, why they're used, and what we think of them and who we think it's appropriate for. Like, are you a good candidate to try this or that? Or when should you maybe think that I've outkicked this and it's time for me to move on to the next thing?
I love it. I absolutely love it. I want to start with putting your coaching hat on in regards to an athlete situation I came across this week first, since we're talking
Excellent.
theories. I was thinking of this as you were chatting. And then I came across an Instagram post of a Colorado workout, the cross country team doing 16 by 1K, like early in their cross country season, which is a monstrous workout. Whatever stage you're in, that's a pretty big session. 16K.
Yeah, 10 miles.
Yeah, minimum rest. Anyways, I had an athlete this week who divulged to me. We do 2 quality sessions a week. This is sort of an overspeed day and a threshold day, we'll call it. But sometimes the overspeed day is still like a threshold day. You know how we do sometimes. It gets all in there. Anyways, this athlete tells me that he is wondering if there's a problem with the amount of rest that I'm prescribing because he can't keep his pacing up. And so he's been not following the rest. He's been taking more rest. So he's ready for the next rep to keep the quality high of the rep. So it sounds like for weeks, if not more, maybe months, he has been, when he gets into the meat of the workout, what is it? Changing the deal, we'll call it. Like if it's as simple as, let's say, 8 by 800 meters, which I don't think I've assigned him, but with 2 minutes rest, it could be bleeding to 3 minutes, 4 minutes. He just can't, he's not ready yet. You know, what do you think when that happens? What's your, what would be your, and so the question was, and I think so many people can benefit from this, right? That's why I'm bringing it up, because he's not alone whatsoever. And so his message was, we need to look at, I really want to be able to run as fast as I can. So I'm thinking we need to add more rest to these sessions. What are your thoughts? So that was sort of how it was proposed. And we're putting our coach's hat on. You tell me what you would say. Then I, of course, will tell you what I said.
This is one of those instances where I'm going to be more direct with you than I would be with the athlete that I work with, because you have to maintain the relationship, right?
Sure.
So my response would be something along the lines of, this is one of those that you leave to the coach. Like, there are times where feedback is paramount. And most of the time, good feedback is necessary for good coaching athlete relationship. And I cringe when I hear coaches say this, like, sometimes you just need to do the plan. Sometimes you need to say that I'm paying a coach for a reason, and this falls under their umbrella, not mine. Because what is the first thing we say when we hear about a workout? We either ask, like you said, 16 by 1,000 meters, 16 by K. My 2 questions were, and I didn't get to say them out loud because we moved on. How much rest and at what intensity? Because the 16 by 1,000 means nothing without those 2 parameters: how fast and with how much rest.
That's with
and
every
the rest
single
is really
workout, by the way. Those are the
every
parameters.
workout.
Correct. Yes.
Yes. All the way up to a 60 by 1 minute with 0 rest workout, which is just a 1 hour run.
Okay.
The 0 rest tells you how hard you're really working, right? All the way down to
that workout sounds
you could
terrible. I don't want to do that workout. That's a jerk move to prescribe that one. You should do that sometimes. Sneak that into an athlete's plan.
Tell it is an interval
6 by 5 minutes with 0 seconds rest. That'd be funny. Continue.
Yes. But if I gave you 6 by 1 minute with 5 minutes rest, you would get a little bit nervous. 6 reps, 1 minute each with 5 minutes rest. How easy is that? No, you would know what the 5 minutes means. It means that this is going to be a brutal all out
Mm,
1 minute. So anyway, yeah, the answer is that if you can't keep the pace with the rest that's given, you're choosing the wrong pace. The wrong rest has not been supplied.
right. I feel like, and not just new athletes, but I think tenured athletes as well, you set an expectation in your head. I am going to run my 800-meter repeats at my goal 5K pace. Maybe your goal 5K pace is a stretch. So you set out
Yep.
dead on the nuts of what you believe you should be able to run. It's an innocent mistake people can often make. This makes sense. 800-meter repeats, I should be able to run at 5K pace or goal 5K pace. They make this up in their head. Maybe they're not in 19-minute shape, they're in 1930, but they're trying to run their 800s at 19-minute pace. Anyways, and they get into it and they go, "Uh-oh, I am only going to go the wrong direction here now." And then they're
Mhm.
faced with the decision of what to do. Do I pull the plug? Do I bleed out slowly and allow my reps to get crappy? Or do I take 3-4 minutes rest, 5 minutes rest in the middle of the workout as a solid reset so I can stick to the pacing plan? Right?
Yes.
And the right answer is none of those. The right answer is you're out kicking your fitness coverage, unfortunately, and
Yeah.
your expectations don't meet reality. And so I sent him a clip this morning. All of a sudden, the CU workout popped up, and the first thing they finished their first 1,000-meter rep. It's a quick Instagram clip that expands. I didn't watch the YouTube video. Guys come through in like 3:15 ish, and he said, "If you're having a problem, it's not." It's not the rest. I'm assuming it was a minute rest. I bet you it was a classic 16 by a K with a minute rest. I would almost, I'm guessing. It's not the rest. It's your pace. You're running too fast. And I was like, I just
Mhm.
said the exact same words to somebody yesterday. And one of the big powerhouse programs in the country just literally echoed that. And then he goes along to say, in different words, how speed is a bit over glorified in the sense that like where he believes speed and VO2 max work was going to come in was actually in the later stages of the race when you need to start reaching for it. The majority of our race is going to be done in this feeling, in this system of these 1,000-meter repeats. We can hold off on anything flashy, and that's only to guarantee that we have some efficiency once it gets tough in the last mile of the 10K. It's just a very
Mm.
interesting approach. And so the
Yeah.
answer is if you feel like you need more rest or you're bleeding out the back half of these speed workouts, you can't force a pace. You need to allow yourself some grace early in the session. It's okay to sort of lay an egg the first couple of reps and be a little slow if that means saving the integrity of your overall session. Feel it out first. I think that comes with tenureship, but the problem isn't the rest, correct? The problem is you're not in touch with your
Yeah.
pacing or your effort levels for the prescribed distance in session. So, anyways, I'm sure it happens to a lot of people out there. And let's be honest, Brakken, has it not happened to you before? I certainly have gotten into a workout and I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, this is only going to go one direction now. What do I do? And so I figured I'd drive that point home so some people heard it. There'll be a few that need to hear it out there.
I would say it's the most common error in workouts is going in with a preconceived notion of what you should be running that day, pace wise.
Mm-hmm.
And the pace is often incorrect. How many times you hear people say, if I know if I can just do this in a minute 30 each rep, I'm on my way towards doing what I need to do. It's like, no,
Mm-hmm.
that's not true. That's not true. It might be, but it might not be. And what we forget is how we tweak it and how
Yeah.
we change the deal. Suddenly I'm resting 2 minutes instead of a minute 30. And now I can hit my 130. It's at the end, we look back on our log and see I hit the paces. And we don't know that it's not the correct pace right now. So we have to always remember, are we training a system today or are we training a pace today?
Sure.
And short rest means system.
Uh, yeah. Well, a short rest is subjective, but the interesting thing, and then we'll get into the topic of the day, but I fear this, we're teaching people today for this Friday, this long run episode. So,
Mhm.
is the other side of the coin, have you experienced people you work with? I have some which I would consider like quality session masters in the sense where they understand how to jig the system now. And so if I believe an athlete is capable of running 5 by a mile at 7 minutes flat, they're running their first one at like 7:40, and then their next one at 7:25, and then their next one they're taking off these huge chunks in every single session. They're ultra cautious with, and their progression looks great.
Mhm.
Look at you managing your effort. Your thoughts on this? So if if an athlete is capable of 7-minute on the head pace average for let's say 5 by a mile with 2 minutes rest, standard workout, but they go 7:40, 7:25, 7:10, 7 flat, 6:45 for the last one. And you look at that on paper, and I have people with this big a spread sometimes. And you go, well, if you're capable of averaging 7 minutes, and yes, your last one was faster than that, but your overall average was still a 7:15 or a 7:20 when you average out all 5 reps. How much are you leaving on the table? And I have like a half a dozen athletes now who are so conservative early that every session looks like that. Bigger, smaller gaps or
Mhm.
spreads. They're so afraid of blowing up, or they want it to look pretty on paper, that they're ultra cautious early and then leaving things on the table. And so I always go back and forth with that advice about, well, start conservative then, because you actually can leave fitness on the table. It becomes a 2 by a mile workout instead of a 5, because
Right.
you ran gray zone effort for your first 3, being too afraid to blow up or respecting the workout
Yeah.
too much. I see you have thoughts.
Well, you're right. And it's again, it's we're trying to make ourselves feel good in workouts with the best of intentions, but you're not helping yourself. You are leaving things on the table. When I did night school, one of the things we drove home is that if you stay within like 5% of a pace, you get a lot of the benefits of the pace,
Yep.
all the way up to like 8% of a range, sometimes 10%. You get a lot of the benefit of that with less cost, less recovery. But if your reps are spaced out beyond that, you're not getting that intended benefit anymore.
Sure.
So yes, you're not blowing up, but you're also not getting the intended benefit. Like you're getting some, but if you're going to run that much slower, you might as well just do it continuous. Like if you start
Yeah.
at 740 to get down to 645, you might as well just run 740 for 5 straight miles and call it a day, because that'll give you some stimulus. But
Mhm.
taking the rest at the end that's intended for 7-minute pace, but at 740, you're too far outside the intended range anyway, and you're not getting the systemic benefit you wanted. So sometimes we have to be less cautious, which is always dangerous as a coach to say those words, but sometimes you even have to program in a fast start workout.
Mhm. Which, yeah, you've done for eons. I've done it now for a few years. It's just we'll just put this right where I want it out of the gates. Go run 800 at 90%, 95% to start this, and then let's get into our workout, right? Yeah,
Yep.
that's always a tough one. Um, I had one more thing to say about that. What was it? Oh, the advice there is what I tell people on that session is like, when I look at the results come in, and let's just use the 5 by a mile with 2 minutes rest, just a workout easy to comprehend. I say the mission of this workout, like if you just want to say like what splits should I shoot for, or what my goal for you would be, like if I look at the progression of this workout over time, your average pacing has gotten faster for all reps. I don't care about a standalone rep. I don't care about 1 or 2 off. I want to see the average pacing of these sessions go down at non-race effort. So the goal of this session is to run the fastest average you can. And if you go out way too slow, you're going to leave time on the table. And if you go out way too easy, I'm talking over speed, VO2 max, like we're
Mhm.
working hard, right? I'm not even really worried about systems. We're going way past threshold. We are sending, right? We're not even looking at our heart rate for 800-meter repeats if we're hitting it hard. So I say the goal is to
Mhm.
run as fast as you can on average at non-race effort. And it's as simple as that. You go too fast, you bleed out the back end, you don't run your best. And that's a good way to get in touch with your body and think of it that way. So, am I really running my fastest average for all reps if I start that conservative? The answer is no. But the fine line comes if you err on the other side. So, that was the other conversation I thought was worth having before we actually get into the meat and potatoes of this.
And blowing up in a workout is a beautiful experience.
Oh,
It's a great learning opportunity.
it's a terrible
Going
experience.
too hard every time is not, but blowing up and learning your lesson and finding the edge, taking an extended rep off and then getting back to the workout, that's the runner's way. That's how you learn oftentimes. So
Mm-hmm.
we can't be afraid of blowing up. We just need to schedule around it as often as possible.
Okay, last question then. And I have a firm belief on this one.
Okay.
Let's say you are on rep 3 of this 5 by a mile, and you're like, I'm running 7 flat, I'm doing it, this is what I believe I should be at, and you run 7 flat, 7 flat, and then on rep 3, you're like, I am reaching right now for 7 flat. Like I had to almost kick home race to hit my 7 flat. You're only 3 into your 5. What does Brakken Kraker do? Does he take an extra rest and
Well,
reset? Does he say, I'll bleed out and staunch the bleed? Do you pull the plug now? I have an answer, but I'm curious yours.
it's the classic me. What was the purpose of our workout? If it's systems, I need to reset until my system is back where it needs to be. If I need my heart rate under 130, I need to get it back under
Sure.
130 and then adjust the rest of my pacing to do that very thing. But if it's effort or if it's pace, I am taking whatever I need to take in order to start again and shortening that rep to as short as it needs to be to finish without falling off. And I just did this the other day. I set off to run a certain workout on a cross country course, and I ended up shortening each rep all the way through until I was running 400s by the end.
Instead of,
Because that was the only way I could keep. I wanted to run. I started off with I was going to do 2 mile, 1 mile, 1 mile on UW Parkside's cross country course, Kirk.
Yeah.
And I made it 1.5 miles, and then an 800, and then 4, 4, 4, 4.
That sounds.
That's just what it became.
Do you remember 3 weeks out from my half marathon? I set out to do and I did almost the exact version of that, and I still had a great race 3 weeks later. But it just reminds me, like I kept the pace, but way scaled back the duration.
Yeah, and I decided that day I am working hard today. And so now I'm taking whatever dosage I can work hard for, but I have to complete the total distance. That's the bargain today. Other days I would have taken double recovery and gone back and said, all right, now I'm lowering it down to a different pace. That day I said, nope, the pace is the pace. Let's find out exactly how fit I am for keeping this pace today.
That's a good approach.
And it was depressing.
I've taken that approach. It's like sort of let's keep this productive and the mission will be accomplished, but it's going to be just less productive than I was hopefully intending, right? Like it was just like, it is.
I thought of you during that. As soon as I moved from 800 down to 400, I thought, Kirk just called me after a workout like this a couple weeks ago.
Yeah. Yeah, I did. I think you get done with rep 3, you're reaching, you're like, I did it. I got 3 of them in a row at my goal pacing. I always start the next rep on schedule. You know what? I'm not ready. I don't wanna. I am worried, but I haven't given myself the opportunity yet. And generally, and this is where I could go either way. You get 800 meters into the mile rep and you're like, I'm going backwards. You can step off the track, but at least get your intended pacing, just like you said. Or a lot of times, if I fizzle on the last one, I fizzle. Like, okay, but then it's confirmatory that I need to cut the workout. But I wanted to give myself the chance. You never really know. I was reaching, but maybe I can still pull off another one. And of course, we don't want to race in workouts to do it, but I always start the rep as planned and make it prove to me that, yeah, you miscalculated or it's not your day. And even if I run 7:15, I may still see it through and then be very confident that I can be done now because I'm overcooked. But I think either way, you probably end up in the same spot, right? Whatever decision you make.
And I think, again, it's system work. I stop when it tells me. When it first, like threshold work, I stop when my heart rate says I finish that rep. Like I'm not going to be able to do another one. I'm done. If I'm doing pace work, I'm not quitting on the stool. I have to, because that's when I don't want to do it. Threshold work's rarely, I shouldn't say never. It's rarely so hard that you get done with a rep and think I couldn't ever do more. It's just looking down and saying that exceeded my limit. We're done. Because I could do more, but I shouldn't. But speed-based work, pace-based work, you get done and think never again. And that's when it's important to start another one and prove it.
Yeah. And I never use heart rate limiters on speed workouts, but on the threshold stuff, it's almost always. All right. Well, sorry, I almost 20 minutes of detraction from the main episode, but it's along the lines of what we're chatting about today, I suppose. Workouts, training styles.
The TRP way.
Yeah. All right. Why don't we get into it?
Well, I think we should start today. I want to look at let's pare it down. Let's do 4 systems. The 4, I don't know if they're the most common training systems, but they are very commonly used systems in different versions of running and look at what they are, why they are, and who they're for.
Okay.
And then, of course, the drawbacks, who they're not for, because every system certainly has candidates and people who are non-candidates. Does that sound good?
Sounds great.
All right. So I think the most widely used system of training would be Jack Daniel's training formula. Does that sound right to you?
Yes. I have a sort of caveat to everything you're going to say
Okay.
as far as like
Okay.
relating 80-20 running to all of this and what is maybe the most
Yeah.
popularized, but that's even like a bigger umbrella, let's call it. So yes, let's say Jack Daniels. Explain
If
it.
you went to a coach
Yeah.
and said, "Do you coach out of a book?" And if the answer was yes, I think the most common book used at the high school and college level would probably and the club level. I'd say high school and club level would be Jack Daniel's running formula.
When did that come out? When was that?
Oh, give me 1 second.
Well, I can look it up too, but are you going to look at the book and see when it was published? One of your books on
Yes.
yourself? Okay. Well, I'll let you do that then. I think it's important to date this method, right? Because we'll talk
Yeah.
about the Norwegian double threshold training or whatever, and we can say, okay, circa day 2020, let's just say. What is this?
1990 let's see here. So this is the second edition. First was 1998, second edition was 2005.
98, 2005. So what dates back the furthest? Where's Lydiard go to? Is Lydiard
I mean, he's well
is right.
prior to this, but I don't think I shouldn't say anyone. Most people coming up right now aren't finding Lydiard in their first search for how to train. So
Yeah.
I just decided not to include Lydiard.
Well, I'm just thinking like when you go back to the oldest sort of like accepted training styles, like where does it, if you were to put a name on it or a system, what would
I think when you think system and published books, it probably is Arthur
that's what I think.
Lydiard.
Yeah. Anyways, all right.
I'm sure there's someone else, but
Explain Jack Daniels for us.
okay. So Jack Daniels, he made it into a book. And that was really key, running formula. And I think the word formula there is really, really important to understand why his was so successful, is because he made it template style. He made an actual formula. Do this pace on this day, this pace on this day, this pace on this day. Easy beforehand, recovery afterwards. He even named them I pace, R pace, T pace. Yeah, it was a formula. You didn't have to understand it. You could just follow it. But he wrote the book with the full, first half of it is all understanding it. So you could understand it if you wanted to. And then at the end of the book, he has all of these. Let's see, where are we getting to them here? All these charts, all these training plan options for different distances and pace charts. You can just go through and say, I can run this. So here's the pace I run, and here's the plan for how I do it. It was basically the precursor to ask AI to write you a training plan to break 20 minutes in the 5K. And that's what he did. He made it digestible to the commoners. And basically, now all these systems are going to be watered down today because we don't have time to get really, really in depth. But Jack Daniel's system is based around the concepts of working at VO2 max, pace, working faster than that, doing speed reps, which is what he would consider 1500 meter or mile pace, and then doing tempo work. Those are the three most important staples of his system. And this is the classic 3-pace approach. Tempo work for strength, VO2 max, or what some people would call 5K pace for race intensity, and then speed work at mile pace. That's kind of the classic formula, which he didn't invent. He just cleaned it up and made it palatable for the masses. And it works really well for the everyday and random runners, high schoolers, track clubs, because it gives you a bit of everything you need and really nothing you don't. And it's clean and easy to follow.
And yeah, it's your fulcrum is somewhere in the middle where you can sort of race down or race up. It probably is viable up to a half marathon. I mean, even you could extend it out further based on your volume, but it also could race you down if you had to run a mile or, of course, a fast 5K. It sort of covers your bases, right? Wouldn't you say?
Yep.
It gives you the way to all routes.
If you're a miler, you're doing the most of your workouts at that mile pace. your interval pace, your rep pace. And then you're doing supplemental work at 5K pace, and you're doing your strength work at tempo pace. And if you're all the way up to the marathon, you're doing a lot of work at your tempo pace. And then you're doing still a decent chunk at 5K and supplementally doing some 1500-meter work just to stay sharp and efficient. So those are the three paces that really drive the program. Again, if you're a Jack Daniels disciple, you will argue that I'm really selling it short, and I am. But that's the general 10,000-foot view. 10,000, not even a 20. That's closer to the ground. This is a 10,000-foot view of that training plan. And it's in book form. High school coaches, you will find this on at least half of the high school coaches in this country have this book on their desk or on their shelf.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the word tempo too being such an integral part. The first time I started using the word threshold or working a threshold run, or like it transitioned, like, because those words feel interchangeable. They're not. They can mean the same thing, but you don't know that necessarily depending on the prescription. But tempo was, we went for an 8-mile tempo run in the off season in college. It was a tempo run.
Right.
We went for tempo this and tempo that, and I still use it today. And I think it spawns. I mean, I ran in high school in 1997 through college in 2005, right at the height, if you're looking at the timeline of this book and the verbiage used. And we started to use VO2 max and things like that as like, what are we doing today? And I didn't know what it really meant, but tempo, I feel like it spawned there, and it was in the peak of our sort of like younger competitive years. I guess you ran shorter distances than I did, but it was always tempo. Threshold was never, I'm going to go for a threshold run. What is that? That wasn't until the late teens when we started popularizing it, at least with lay people, at least in my opinion. So anyways, it brings me back to like exactly how we looked at this. There would be our workout of the day written on the board in college, and it would be like faster than race pace, at race pace, or slower than race pace, which is exactly what you're outlining. It would be like, simple mission. Here's the goal. Go do that.
Yep.
And so I think it's like it's as complicated as a simple formula can get. Or no, it's as simple as a complicated. Which way works better? Simple as a complicated formula, or complicated as a simple formula?
I think it's a horse piece, Kirk.
Horse a piece. Anyway,
6 of one, half dozen of another.
So where do you want to start the conversation about it? Validity, who should try it, what you think of it, all that.
I think that where the conversation starts is about what it leaves out. And he has this term for the paces he has easy pace and recovery pace. And he has scripts for all this. He has his VDOT calculator. Mm-hmm. This was his great contribution along with the book, which was that you put in any race distance and time that you've performed at, and his VDOT calculator calculates what you could do at any other distance and tells you your training paces. And this is why it was so easy for coaches to use and for running clubs to use, because you didn't have to think, you just had to listen. You just had to follow and then execute. It's not highly accurate person to person because it doesn't take into account personal differences like slow twitch or fast twitch, what your predilection is, what your talent level is, what your training history is, but it's easy. But what it doesn't do is touch upon on any of the in-between distances. And his term for that is dead zones. Those are dead zones. They're not close enough to any of the races you care about to be worth training at. So we're just going to avoid them. It's very, very simple. It's easy to follow, but as such, it does leave some holes in the game. And one of the big weaknesses of this is an over-reliance on his VO2 max pacing, his 5K or slightly faster race pace. It's a big part of this program.
Now, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, and you are better studied than I am on a lot of this stuff. He had like the 2 deviation from race pace sort of system or formula, something like that. Like
that is the next plan, actually.
Who is that?
That's Frank Horwill.
Oh my goodness. All right. Continue then.
Which is what we're going to talk about next. You just jumped the gun.
Whoops.
So he doesn't deviate that much.
Okay.
But what he did do, to his credit, is he saw the benefit of working slower on threshold work. So his T pace, his threshold pace, or his tempo work was basically the classic Jack Daniels tempo run is 4 miles at slightly faster than marathon pace. That's at the slow end of threshold. But he understood that. And I think part of it was that he understood there was a range, and his range, he chose the low end because he did a lot more VO2 max work. So because he understood humans respond well to intervals, intervals are at high intensities like VO2 max are a little bit costly. We're going to balance it out with strength work, but we're going to do safe strength work. Strength running, meaning tempo work,
Mm-hmm.
threshold work, but the slow end. So that is really, I think, where the conversation begins and ends about the effectiveness of this program is A, are these paces accurate to you? And B, is your time best served with VO2 max as a big focus of your training and tempo runs being such a small focus in terms of how much time you really spent working near threshold?
Yeah, and that really depends on what kind of runner you are, in quotes, and what your predisposed biological markers are in regards to, let's say, fast and slow twitch. And if you have a big aerobic
Yeah.
system because you were gifted with it from birth, or if you don't. For me, this plan, as I've developed as a runner, even today, would leave me short. It was the reason this exact formula is the reason why I was a great 1500-meter runner, an okay 5K runner in college, and barely made my national team in cross country, which was 5 miles. This formula,
Mhm.
which we followed in college, which was a great formula, trust me, this worked for a lot of guys, and it worked really well for the guys who ran the 5K and the 10K because that was their best events. They crushed it in the cross season. They crushed it. Like, they needed some higher turnover work mid-year. Whereas me, my PR for 3 years came in my first race as a freshman because I responded so
Mhm.
quickly and then had no platform underneath me to extend it late into the season, let alone multiple years. And so, speaking, I'm going to say for the masses, a newer runner, somebody who's developing, probably not your formula, for example. Somebody who has a ball sport background or a fast twitch background, there's probably better options, or at least more heavily weighted on the tempo threshold option. You got to know what kind of athlete you are, and most don't. A lot of people who get into running in their 20s, 30s, 40s, they're not even sure. Am I gifted or am I not? I don't know. Let's find out. And of course, you're going to
Mhm.
improve on all of these systems we're going to talk about today, the four of them. But for me, I would say this formula would need more weight on the T, let's call it tempo threshold, than the faster stuff. And it was the trap I fell in college, trying to be a 1500-meter runner, drawing it out for cross country in the fall. Not a bad
Yeah.
program. It's very well rounded, and that's the thing. And it's simple: at faster, slower than race pace. Let's go for it. But I think that's where it would fall short. What do you think?
Yeah, I think this is for it works very well for slow twitch athletes.
Correct.
People who need more VO2 max and speed interval work. I think it balances out their equation nicely. For people who need to spend time working on the, what as we call it, the grindier stuff, the
Mm-hmm.
sustained efforts, the threshold work, there's not enough of that to make this sustainable. This is the first book I bought about running. This is the first training plan I wrote for myself coming out of college. And as a result, a year later, I had the same 5K PR as I did during college. I hadn't improved at distances at all,
Mm-hmm.
despite adding in long runs. I still couldn't sustain. I could run along, I could run long in the mountains,
Yep.
but I couldn't on a flat course rip for 90 minutes yet. It wasn't there.
It.
So I agree with you. I think this is a good entry point for DIYers
Yeah, I agree.
who want to learn how to balance their own training. And I think it's a good plan for people who need to start learning what different paces feel like, because you're going to get a lot of the same type of three pace work.
Um, I think the other place it is helpful is like just a clear objective for the day, right? Like
Yes.
like this is the plan. Go ahead. It's going to show you completely different training styles. I think, or yeah, let's call it training styles or session. The mission of each session can vary, notably, obviously, with the three options. But I think where some of these, like, I don't know about you when you were younger, but me, like, it wasn't explained like, Kirk, running slower than race pace is beneficial because of this. Like, why would you ever run slower in quality sessions than you intend to race? That gap was never bridged for me. Like, go out and run 8 mile tempo. You want to race on a cross country course at 5 flat pace, but why am I running 5:30 pace today? Like, how's this going
Uh-huh.
to make me run 5 minute pace faster? I just think more credence to that system. Obviously, now that I'm biased and have learned this myself, I feel like I haven't read the book in full. Does he get into? I guess my question is, does he get into that part of it at all?
Yeah.
He does. Okay.
Yeah. He's always more of a scientist than he is a psychologist. And I think it works for the book. You're reading this book to understand the relationship of systems, not necessarily so you can go out and preach to people about why the system is so important and how you would tweak that system for different races.
Sure.
So, but what it's really clear in this is about exactly what you're doing. I mean, he has these workouts that scale as you go. So in week 1, you're doing a version of it. And then in week 4, you're doing a version. And in week 11, you're doing a version, but things scale up from 10 to 12 reps to 12 to 14 reps. And it teaches you how to think about building workouts. So for the people like myself who wanted to do this long term and wanted to know how to coach others to do it, it was important to see, how does a science-based mind think about scaling workouts? How does a scientific mind think about balancing intensities throughout the week? And a lot of my early plans reflected this.
Yeah, and I would.
But I think it's a short-term plan for most people. I think it's like a starter car. Some people will drive that for 30 years, but most people eventually drive that car long enough to find out what they want in their next car. And that's what this training plan is for me. This
Mhm.
teaches you what you do and don't like about training and what you need and don't need.
Helps you understand your gears, right? As you mentioned, your pacing,
Yes.
getting in touch with what different intensities feel like, sort of rounding you out from the beginning, right? Instead of saying, hey, if we look at this like macro level, like stepping back, step one, build a foundation, some of this stuff isn't going to pay off nearly as much now as it will years down the road. So let's forget about it. It includes it all, it puts all the ingredients into the pot. Um, the thing I would say, and you've used this analogy in relation to like your like physical therapy and health and recovery tools. It's like, what can I do to recover the quickest in between races? And your answer would be the least amount possible. The more you add to the mix, the more you have to keep adding to the mix to get better or get the same result. And this is sort of like throwing everything at you out of the gates, and probably maybe like you said, a beginner plan, stunting long-term development eventually, maybe, but still very viable. Like if you want to go start racing,
Mhm.
of course, all these plans would get you there, though, that we're going to talk about. But
Yeah.
it's like, how many ingredients do you want to throw into the mix out of the gates? I guess that's like that's the question. You want to progress with the fewest amount of ingredients possible until you need to start layering in more. This is kind of how I look at
Right.
things, anyways. But what else do you want to add to that one?
I think I'm happy with that. I do want to note that I don't think this is a program for the classic hard drivers, the people that will just thrash themselves, because everything leads from one to the next. And I would have to reacquaint myself to say this for sure. He's not the biggest deload off-season guy. He's where I first got my big long builds from. 16-week builds, 20-week builds. He's not a take a week off in the middle. Now, I may be putting words in Jack Daniel's mouth, and I am not. I'm several stratospheres below him. I don't belong doing that. But I think for people who, if they see a plan, will follow a plan, this can be dangerous for you if you're also a really hard driver.
The one who burns a little too hot, a little too often, you can bury yourself with it,
Yes.
so to speak. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, as they say, 90% of coaching is holding your athletes back, and the workhorses, right, who are
Mhm.
go-getters could maybe swing a little too hard. Possibly, is that what you're
Yeah.
saying? Yeah.
Yeah, I believe that. But I think you can't go wrong by choosing this, even if you never see yourself through the end of a block. Simply by reading it all, it gives you the scientific basis for knowing the majority of what you need to know about running.
So if you were to identify yourself as a good candidate for this with a limited running background, how would you know that?
I think if you're someone who does better at a 5K than a mile,
Okay.
or better at a half marathon than a 5K. I think if you're a slower twitch athlete, or if you're someone who just doesn't know where to begin by choosing quality work, you can go out and run all day long. You like that kind of thing, but you need to just start thinking about adding in some more intense sessions. You're going to learn all about it, the types of sessions, the classic sessions that you can do in here. There's a lot of standard intervals and some multi-pace workouts where you'll start at 5K and progress down to 1,500-meter reps, like 200s and 400s to finish off workouts. You'll get tempo runs. You get that kind of work. You might even get some quality long runs with tempo in the middle type things. So you'll learn what can be done with intensity. And I think that's valuable.
The person who's been running steady for years or gray zone, like, oh, and I kind of run hard every day and I've done it for a while. Like, this might be a good next entry point. Like, I just don't have a lot of structure. This will create structure. My curiosity would be like so many people out there, especially if you're newer, like, I don't know what my 5K pace is. Like, if it's pace driven, that can be tough for people who have no idea, but you should learn as you go, right? You're going to swing and miss a few times. You're going to get more and more dialed in, but you would have to be somewhat in the ballpark of your pacing abilities probably to follow.
Yeah, but he does his 12-minute VDOT test where I know that it has its own strengths and weaknesses for that duration of a test, but he does time trials, which again, he's a scientific guy. He gets these kind of things. So I would say it's probably the plan that people will stay on the shortest, but get the most out of in terms of learning.
You'll see very quick short-term gain from a plan like that.
Yeah,
for sure. If you don't have much structure and you go dive into this plan in 4 months from now, you are going to be better. You're going to be notably better.
Yes.
Now, where will you be in 4 years versus following a process of another plan? Who knows? But like, this would be like a get rich quick scheme, so to speak. Not that abrasive, but you understand what I mean. Like, this is going to get you there. You'll be ready to race in a short amount of time if you're coming from any sort of foundation, I feel like, on a plan like that.
Yeah. I agree.
Okay.
So I then want to move to the next version up of this. And I don't know if everyone would consider this the graduated program, but this would be Frank Horwill's program. It goes by many names, the multi-pace training theory, 5-pace training theory. This is what Seb and Peter Coe took and made their own for their version of multi-pace training theory. But this is basically that program expanded and intensified. This is what, I think if you had to take a look at middle distance programs, track programs across the nation at the college level, this Frank Horwill multi-pace training or 5-pace training theory would be the most common book you would see on a coach's desk or on their shelf. And even if they don't use it, they've read it. And this is the book my college coach coached out of. His charts, his paces, his workouts came from Frank Horwill.
Okay. That book would be sitting right on top of Jack Daniel's book.
Yeah.
In the
Yeah, it's like high school and college training. That's how I see these two pairing together. And I'll lay out the principles and then we can go from there. And this is going to sound very familiar to any track athlete on the planet. All right, so you basically have 5 training paces that matter. And there are 2 ways people have looked at it, but kind of the evolved way is that your one pace that rules them all is your goal race. So let's say you're a 5K runner. 5K pace is your North Star, and then it's 2 deviations on either side. So from 5K, whoa, I don't like that.
Zoomed out on you. I didn't know it could do that.
I thought I'd
you
turn
did.
this
You
out.
did that. You're casting a spell. You look stupid.
All right, come on in.
Do this.
This is just who I am now, Kirk.
You seem really far away, like I'll have to shout at you.
All right, I'm gonna try to pull up the app while I'm doing this.
This will work.
Oh, I can do this.
Your camera's too smart.
Anyway, the point is, from 5K, you have down to 3K, down to 1,500 meters, and up to 10K and up to half marathon. Those are your 5 distances.
/ pace. There you go. Now
look at that.
Okay.
Yeah.
What happened?
So those are your 5.
Listening is Brakken's camera zoomed out. Like suddenly he was like at the back of the room. It zoomed out like 5-fold for some reason. It was bizarre. Now she's back, and now you're right in my face again. We're back out to our intimate dinner.
Yeah. But the theory here is you choose your race pace, and then you run 2 deviations on either side to support that race pace and that race stride and that race system. And so he's written a series of letters about his training that have been published. Sometimes it's to an editor of a magazine, sometimes it's to an athlete, but Frank Horwill's letters float around there. And then Peter Coe's letters exist to and from people. So we get to see the inner workings of why he chooses this. But the basic concept is he would say, if you want to get better at a 10K, the best way to get better at running 10K pace is to get better at running 5K pace. And the best way to get better at running 5K pace is to run 3K pace. And then also the best way to get better at the strength of 10K is to get better at a half marathon. If you have the strength of a half marathoner and the speed of a 5K runner, you're going to be a really good 10K runner.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the way his system works. And so he was the first time I ever saw anything like a 10 or a 14-day cycle, because you can do his in a 7-day cycle that has an A and a B week. And each week you touch upon let's say you're a 5K runner, you have a 5K pace workout every Monday. But then Thursday you have a 3K workout, and like 3K and 1500. And Saturday you have a 10K and half marathon workout. So you touch upon the adjacent paces all the time. So the 5-pace or multi-pace training theory is that you identify multiple paces that all have a direct relationship to your goal race, and you get better at all of them. And the percentage of where you're working at shifts throughout the year as you get closer to your race. But it's jack of all trades, master of one.
Mm-hmm.
Is how this program would be described.
And I will say, just looking on the pro circuit, even today, when you just talk about what races they choose in relationship to their A race, when they choose it, taking a step back, and of course, this doesn't reflect on what they're doing in training, but you look at somebody like a Josh Kerr or a Jakob Ingebrigtsen, actually everybody, literally Cole Hawker this year, over race distancing at some point early in the season. They're a 1,500-meter guy, but they're running the 5K. Then 3 weeks out from the A race, suddenly the 1,500-meter runner is racing 800s under race pace, all to get good, strong, yet comfortable at desired race pace by racing slower than and faster than race pace, and then ultimately running the race that matters, which would be right in the middle. You see it across the board. Almost every athlete periodizes their season that way, just on the racing front. So if you see the best of the best periodizing that way on a racing front, you can probably believe it filters back into their training, meaning early in the season, maybe you have a little more at and slower than your intended race and race pace. And then as the big dances approach, you have a little more at or faster than, but they're always all in the mix, correct? In some capacity. Yes. It's the dosages that change in this program, as far as I understand it.
Yeah. You never leave any of those 5 paces behind.
Right.
But the dosages change. And he also does multi-pace workouts. So in the fall, we did 3 types of workouts in the fall. We would do mile-paced reps, where we would do like 30 by 200 at mile pace, slow walk, jog back, which for an 800-meter runner is slower than race pace work. We would do fartleks, where we would do our common was the 1, 2, 3 fartlek. We would do 1 minute at mile, 2 minute at 3K pace, 3 minute at 5K pace with slow jog in between.
You'd be deviating more than 2 from your 800-meter. That'd be 3.
What would that be? Well, we were 800 miles.
Oh, okay.
Milers, I guess.
Okay. Then it fits. Uh-huh.
We would do a 30, 60, 90 fartlek with walk in between, which really isn't a fartlek, but we would do 800-meter pace, mile pace, 3K pace for 30 seconds, 60 seconds, 90 seconds with equal walk, jog, recovery. And we would do these 4 through 6 mile out and backs, 2 to 3 miles steady out, negative split coming back. It'd be like marathon pace out or half marathon pace out, 10K pace back. We did a lot of workouts where we combined multiples. We would do 1,200, 1,000, 800, 800, going 5K pace, 5K pace, 3K pace, and then we go 6, 6, 4, 4, 2, 2, 2 at mile pace and 800 pace. So we'd work sometimes all 5 paces.
A lot of ladders, ladder style workouts could be very common.
Ladders, yeah. Yep. But instead of just going up and down the ladder, we would also change our paces going up and down. And what the main strength of this is that all your gears chain together. There's not a stride anywhere near your race stride that you're not really good at and really efficient at. And you can change gears during races, and you can kind of hide your stride throughout races. You get really good at anticipating different lulls and paces and slightly running different to save yourself. Like lap 3 of a mile, you'd run a little different form wise than lap 2 of a mile, just slightly different
Mhm.
because you're used to working between mile and 800 and 3K pace during a workout. And I found you had a better kick at the end because you're used to changing gears and having something left to finish hard. So it's really effective for racing.
Mhm.
People that race. This is a great system.
Yeah, we used to do a version of, I guess it was most likely in this regard in college, and we'd run 1,100-meter repeats during our strength
Mhm,
phase of 1,500-meter training, which is a long repeat as a 1,500-meter runner, and the first 800 meters would be
mhm,
at roughly 5K pace. He told us to come through in 2:20, which wasn't far off probably from where we were at, and then kick home
mhm.
and then tighten the screws down to like 3K pace or even try to get close to 1,500-meter pace in the final 300 as we tighten the screws. It was the same thing. It's very good for
Yeah.
gear changing, right? When you need to make responses or moves, you kind of have access to all systems. The thing I'm
Yeah.
thinking that keeps crossing my mind though as you're talking, I mean, I haven't really mentioned heart rate in these first two at all, right? I mean, from big
Mm-mm.
picture, it's like pace, 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 pace. And if you take the
Pace,
majority,
pace, pace.
right, and you take the majority of our listeners out there, I mean, what 80% of them are like heart rate, heart rate, heart rate, heart rate. What did my heart rate do today? Half the people,
Mhm.
90% of the people listening are so out of touch with what their mile or 5K pace is because they race trail races and they work systems and they don't even really know or care. So I'm sure that there's a whole contingency of people listening right now that are like, this is either over my head or I don't know. Like, how am I supposed to execute these workouts? Because there's more of a technical side of things. You and I are very in touch with this because we've been students of this since middle school. When did you run your first
Mhm.
track race? I was in fourth grade, right? And then we progressed through middle school, high school, college. And so it's no, and of course, these are all easily digestible and computable in our heads, or at least, hey, I know my 5K pace, so I can make a good guess.
Mhm.
You hear a beeping?
Are you getting that?
Is that from you?
That's the first time I've had a sound come through from the outside in a long time.
That's why it threw me off. I was like, and in the back, I have these jet skis playing around on the lake today, and they're driving me nuts. It make me want to go do that. But you can't hear that, can
I'm
you?
not getting that.
No? Okay.
No.
Anyways, so what I was saying is, I just want to make sure this isn't over people's heads at the same time. Like, this could be applicable to you. It's just very simple, being like, my intended race intensity. I want to go race for an hour on the trails, a version, and I want to
Mhm.
race my best for an hour. Then the versions of this would be like, what could I sustain for a half an hour race? And what could I sustain for a 15-minute race? And what could I
Mhm.
sustain for a 2 hour race? And then being in touch with just like those sort of feelings or intensities, because there's so many
Yeah.
people out here listening. I can tell you for a fact, half the people I work with are probably like, I don't freaking know. Like these pacing, I'm not going to go out there and thread the
Right.
needle on these workouts. It's technical. It's the elite side of sport that you grew up in, and most people find running after they're done with high
Yes.
school and college. And so, just as like a thing, I keep thinking like there has to be a whole contingency of people out there being like, oh, these paces are over my head. Like it's in one ear out the other. And I just want to
Correct.
say this is still applicable to you. Just start thinking of it in a different way, right?
But you just highlighted one of the main flaws of this program is that it is not for people who don't wanna tinker. It's not for people who don't wanna pour over paces. It's not for people who don't want to, have to hit every rep at an intended pace. This is not for people who need heart rate training. This is for people who want to find out what their paces are or their intensities. You can run this off feel, but it's again, you have to be pretty dialed in for that. But it's for
Hmm.
people who don't mind working off those smaller ranges and doing away with zone-based training. This is for racing. Now, you can race without this, obviously, but this is great for track. It's great for cross country. I find it's very good for trail running, but it has to be applied a little bit differently, like you said. But if you like getting down into the weeds and having your elbows all the way deep into your training, this is a very engaging style of training. If you need variety, novelty, speed work, this is a great plan for you. And if you have trouble getting out of your mechanically sound stride and doing well at other strides, this is a really good training style for you because you have to use slight variations, 5 different versions of your race stride. very good for that whole thing.
What I like about this and also the Jack Daniels, and something that's just coming to mind as I'm thinking through some people I work with, is the building up of confidence in your fitness and ability to navigate your efforts. Meaning, like, there's a mission for today, other than, let's say, like, somebody puts down on, let's just say, my 5 by a mile, and my basic advice of run the fastest average you can without racing, right? Okay, great.
Mhm.
But people can kill themselves or not necessarily know if they're hitting the intended pacing or effort. Whereas if it's like, hey, like, your goal today, like, you're actually going to have something in the tank when you're done, and we're running slower than race pace today. That's okay. You can finish your 6 by 1,000 meter repeats at half marathon pace. You got motorcycles today too. Your sound's
Um,
coming through.
I don't know why you're hearing it. I wonder what's going on with my
Yeah,
mic.
I'm hearing all the background stuff today.
I don't like this.
Ever since it did that voodoo zoom in, zoom out thing. So what I'm saying
Yeah.
is there's a whole side of this in building confidence and, like, feeling accomplished after a workout when they say, okay, the task at hand, like, permission to run in quotes easier or slower than race pace and not go murder yourself the entire session. Yes, there's a time and place, but if it is to run 2 deviations slower than your intended race, like, I can go out, run what I'm supposed to, finish feeling accomplished and not wasted, and move on to the next workout with confidence. And so when you apply, like, a direct mission to the session, I think a lot of people build confidence in their pacing, they learn their abilities better, and when they know the intent, there's that level of accomplishment. The ambient noise just went down on whatever. Were you messing with something?
Yeah, I'm trying to play with my mic. Can you hear this?
Well, now you're very quiet. Now you're quiet.
Really?
Yeah,
I'm
very,
quiet now?
very quiet.
Hmm.
I just
How about now? Am I back?
Yeah, you're back. It's not that noticeable. The background noise wasn't like crazy.
How about this? Can you hear this?
Yeah,
You didn't used to be able to hear that. What is going on?
can't tell you.
I'm going to futz with this later.
Yeah, futz with it later. But point being, you can build confidence by just simply having a workout and then going and executing. Like, hey, I ran all my reps at faster than race pace, and now I feel good about that. There's a whole situation
Mhm.
to this with intent. And especially on the workouts that are supposed to be deviations slower, I find people find very approachable. They finish it out. I did what I was supposed to today, and I'm still available for later this week. And I like the intention behind the system, I think, is what I'm
Yeah.
saying,
I think this is really good for people who are going to race multiple distances.
which we
I
all
want to
do.
PR everything this year.
Yeah.
This keeps you in touch with everything. I think this is very good for people who are, well, I guess I shouldn't say very good. It's very important for people who are in between races to choose the longer race as your goal pace, because you're going to go 2 deviations below, which also means you're going to go 2 deviations above, and you want to make sure that you get into that threshold range. If your race is going to need endurance, you want to make sure that you choose the one that gets you into the range to use that endurance more than the speed, because
Mm-hmm.
this is a track based training program. So you have to bump up. If you're a 5K, 10K person with good natural speed, you need to choose the 10K as your goal distance
Mm-hmm.
so that you get plenty of time running half marathon and marathon threshold and tempo runs. And I think that's key for people here. You're going to get plenty of speed. Don't worry about that. Even at the 10K distance, if you choose that, you're going to do 5K pace work and 3K paced work.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to be fine. So make sure that you choose the one that works best for your longest distance.
I know what I think. I think everybody, that should just be like the golden rule. Like, when
Right.
in doubt, like, when we've had this conversation in different facets on this conversation, but unless you're the extreme endurance athlete, the Rhea Coble of the endurance world, where all you do and know is grind, like, I think you got to question, like, your race and training decisions. Like, step up one and be ready for that, and you're going to race your intended
Yeah.
race. You're ready for a half marathon? Do some pseudo marathon work. Your half marathon, you will knock out of the park, right? There's no denying
Yeah.
that. So, just looking
Yeah.
at the clock, we want to make sure we get to the other two. Do you have anything else to add
Yeah.
to that?
Big weakness of this is that this builds upon a solid foundation.
Mm-hmm.
You can, but you shouldn't start this program up without a good base of aerobic work. yes, this and Daniels have some off-season work. It does not replicate what a true base building phase would require. This is advanced. You must have put in the base work.
And it's kind of like how, I mean, we cycled through this, but in college, what happened? We would be done with the track season in end of May. We would go home for the summer and we would just go run. Go run. If you can run 60 miles a week, you don't even have to have structure. Just go put in the base, and then we're going to start this program day one when you come back. I felt like that was the guidance we got, even with a national championship level successful cross country program in college. It was still like, yeah, go put your base in. We'll start layering in this stuff as soon as you get back, and everything will be fine. And it was. In fact, you got into shape really quickly on this style as well. It's kind of wild. But all right, next one.
But let's address base building, and we're going to go to Phil Maffetone. Kirk,
the king
this
of base
is
building.
one of the older 80s. Are we talking here?
Yeah, I would think
80s,
something like that.
Maffetone, the math method, which he named after himself, and then came up with
MAF,
an acronym for it.
folks, not MATH. Sounds like you kind of
That's
speak
right.
silly. Math. You got a
Math,
speech and problem.
MAF, which went on to become maximum aerobic function, which is a great phrase. And in the whole premise of this is that everyone works too hard, too often, and isn't recovered, and is the vast majority of endurance athletes are underdeveloped aerobically.
Preach, Phil.
They spend too much time doing
Preach,
anaerobic,
Phil. That's all I was
which
gonna
is
say.
correct.
Preach,
The
Phil.
premise is correct.
Yeah, but there's flaws too, but continue.
Yes. And so the entire program is run at your MAF heart rate, which is a glorified way of saying aerobic threshold or slightly under, every single day until you stop improving and then go find something else to do.
The thing I like about that idea, the premise, it is very uninspiring training, first of all. It is just like
Yes.
put your shoes on, go out the door, and just keep doing the same thing over and over and over again. Really. But what I
Yeah.
like is that whole conversation I just touched on, like, I don't know, 20 minutes, half hour ago, is like, you're adding zero, like one ingredient. It's a one ingredient recipe, sort of.
Mhm.
And so,
Yeah.
like, you're going to squeeze all the juice out of phase one of your run life progression and have in theory, such a solid foundation to then pick your own adventure next to build from, right? It's like,
Yeah.
if I only need one thing and I'm continuing to improve, you want to see that through as long as possible before you have to add more ingredients to the recipe to make it taste good or to make it work, right? And so there's a
Mhm.
good the theory there is like I like that idea, like less is more, less complicated is more, but eventually that does run its course and then you must move on. But I like big picture. I kind of like the thought process.
Yeah. Yeah, and his thing is that we just keep rinse and repeating. You perform your MAF test, it's 3-mile run at your MAF heart rate, and then you just keep resetting your paces and your heart rates, and you'll just get better indefinitely. But if you ever stop improving, then we need to start adding in some intensity, and that's where you start getting nothing from Phil. I read his book cover to cover, and I left thinking, so what then? And
Yeah.
it felt like he had a great acronym and a good idea and didn't know what to do from it then. And then he hit lightning in a bottle with Mark Allen, and the guy won a bunch of Ironman world championships. And if depending on who you talk to, he didn't even really use much of Phil's training, or he did entirely Phil's training,
Mm.
depending who you're talking to. Either way, I feel like cart got put before the horse, and this is an incomplete training system. But what this is quite possibly the greatest base building program ever invented,
Yep.
because you do not skip steps. There's only one step, and you do it until you are absolutely sure I'm not getting any better aerobically. At which point, any of these plans you can move into, and you are going to be aerobically set up to do well. And you'll have run pretty big volume by this point because you're not doing any intensity. Mileage comes pretty easy. You're pretty durable by the end of this as well.
Yeah. Yes. I go so back and forth on it because it's one of those things like if you just go at your door and you put your shoes on, you not plod along because this isn't plod style running, right? Like you're
Aerobic threshold is the upper limit.
correct, right? It's not
That's quick enough.
correct. So it's allowing you to run, right? But it's still with a
Yes.
governor on you, and it's like every time you get out there and put your shoes on. I just think I'm so biased with myself where I wish somebody sat me down and made me do this for a year as a young person, right? Beginning
Mhm.
this. Instead, it was like, week one back to training. I'm going to go do quarter mile repeats today after not working out for a month in the summer. Like, just talk about putting the cart in front of the horse. Like, it was just like, if anybody could have shook me and been like, this is how we're actually going to perform our best at the end of the year, or eventually, even if you
Mhm.
take Math's method and just shrink it down to like, I don't have a race till December. I will follow the math program until August, and then I will choose
Mhm.
something else. Do you know what I mean? Like, just like
Yeah.
you can compartmentalize it and break it down into smaller sectors versus being like, you're going to do the math for 4 years. And then like, no, like
Yeah.
I can do it for 3 months, which is really what we did in college. We probably did this without knowing. In the off season, we probably went out and ran about this intensity most days, which is what I did. Once in a while I'd rip because I
Mhm.
just wanted to feel good about myself, but it was mostly this aerobic threshold,
Yeah.
right? And so there's like,
Yeah.
you could use it and apply it within a different system for periods of time, is what I'm getting at.
Correct.
Yeah.
College kids naturally run too fast, as do high school kids. They run closer to aerobic threshold on a daily basis. The problem is they're doing it with workouts in between, and that's why burnout
Correct.
happens.
Correct.
This is great for an off season. What it doesn't do is he doesn't focus on speed development during this. You could be doing speed sprinkles, you could be doing strides, you could be doing downhill work, you could be doing a lot of base building, but for speed in here, and he doesn't have much use for that. He gets really pseudosciency into diet and lifestyle, and that's where he pours the rest of his energy into this program. It's a holistic program, unlike any other program on here. He tells you what to eat, what to eat, what to drink, what to sleep, those type of things. No stretching, low carb, high fat. He gets off into the weeds,
Well, sure. If you're running
but
aerobic threshold, sure, go eat low
yep,
carb, high fat. Fine. What happens
yep,
when you go race a 5K?
yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the big question here. There are always people that this clicks so well for that they can race off of it.
Yeah.
But the vast majority of people can't race off this. The vast majority can't because it's such a system shock. But what this does is it prevents dawdling on easy runs. If you are new to running or you just need to get better at the act of running, easy and recovery runs aren't helping you from a mechanical standpoint.
Sure.
And you might not be doing enough on your interval days to really justify how much you're dawdling on your recovery days. Well, this gives you all pretty solid, a pace that gives you good solid stride work. It's not fast enough to be race pace, but you have to run a good stride to run aerobic threshold. It's a pretty good stride required. And you get a lot of that practice here.
Okay.
So you're not dawdling.
Can you just get, just so people maybe understand the effort level? Let's say this is such a wild generalization, but just to help people understand, you can run a 5K at 7-minute pace. You can race a 5K at 7-minute pace. I know we're talking heart rate, and we'll do it heart rate too. What is this? Maybe 8
8.
8 minute, like a minute per mile, maybe even a little less, maybe 8:30 pace. It'd be like a minute and a half deviation slower from your all out 5K race pace ish. Let's say you have a max,
Let's use the VDOT.
use the VDOT,
How about that?
combine them. I'm just trying to give people point of reference, right? Like, what kind of effort are we
Yeah.
talking here? Or let's say you have a max heart rate of 190. You may be running somewhere around 150, 140, you know what I mean? Like somewhere in there. So just like knowing, like, compared to your all out or your hard or your race efforts or your max heart rate, like what this area you would be running in. It's not like you're seeing a recovery run heart rate zone where you necessarily, it's a notch above that.
Right. So
It's not gray zone though.
if 5K pace is 6 minute, this is going to be close to 7. Marathon pace would be 6:49. This is going to be like 7 to 7:30, somewhere in there.
So what do you wait? So you're saying, like, if you could race a 5K at 5-minute or 7-minute pace, what would that?
It'd be 8, 8:30.
8:30, right? Okay.
You're right in there. But this is where we get to one of the weaknesses of the system. Because he couldn't just say this is aerobic threshold training, he had to make it math training. He couldn't say run at your aerobic threshold. He had to give you a heart rate number to run at
Mhm.
that wasn't an aerobic threshold test. And so he decided to do 180 minus your age and then give a series of caveats. So for you, Kirk, let's just say you were 40 on the dot. Your aerobic threshold, which is not aerobic threshold, it is your MAF heart rate,
That'd be
would be
lower than
140.
aerobic threshold.
But then he has a series of caveats. It's like if you've been training for 0 to 5 years somewhat consistently, leave it the same. If you've been training for 6 to 10 years, more than 5 days per week, raise it up 5 beats. So it'd be 145 for you.
That's some bro science right there.
It is bro science, but it actually gets you probably kind of close. Not super close, because your heart rate's higher than mine, and my aerobic threshold is 148 to 151.
Sure.
Although recently, I think it's actually more like 153. But so this would have me at 147. So it's
It's not far off.
close.
It's erring on the side
What
of
would yours
caution.
be? Yes.
I bet you like 152 to 155.
And you'd be at 145 according to this. So
Yeah.
you can see how it starts to break down depending on training level. And it does not take into account at all the natural variances in people's heart rates and their zones. So there are 40-year-olds who have a max heart rate of 205, and there are 40-year-olds who have a max heart rate of 185.
Less than that.
And this doesn't
Yeah.
take that into account.
Yeah.
So as a result, the number's a little wonky, but because it has to be a clean number to fit his, again, this is why we don't need templates and systems in life. We need theories, but it gets you into a place where you're working high end aerobic every single day until you're ready for a more advanced training program.
Yeah. I think that's fair.
It's not for people with short attention spans. It's not for people with speed needs. It's not for people with turnover issues. It's not for people who are going to be preparing for severely steep work, but that have to be able to run it. It's not for people preparing for short races. It is for people who are new to running, people who are underdeveloped aerobically, or people who need to learn their heart rate, how to feel and be in tune with their heart.
Everybody listening to this podcast has the need for speed. Brakken.
That's true.
You know what, though? When it comes to all this, math is on the opposite. It's such a different side of the coin from the first two we spoke about.
Yeah.
The genius isn't in any of this. There's no geniusness to any of this, honestly. It's more simple than it appears. But it has nothing to do with what you pick or what training style. It has everything to do with when you put the stimulus in the equation.
Yes.
You can pick any of these as long as you like do the, if we picked, and then the fourth thing we talk about, if you picked and did all of these, but just plug them in at the right time in relation to the race you care about most, you could have the best training block of them all by just simply, it's the geniusness, which I know you don't like that word, or what was it? You're wizardry. You didn't like that, is really in, we have all of these puzzle pieces and they just need to be put in the correct order to make the big picture. And it's a jumbled mess if they're not, right? And so that's where we make our money as coaches. And that's why we are valuable, is because it's just, we know where to put the things for you based on the lay of your season and the races and the lead up. And so all this is good and well, but it's really coming down to like what goes where, when, and how do we know what to do that?
Exactly.
And anyways, it's just where my mind is going as you're saying, like, yeah, this has a good place for maybe everybody's year at some point, potentially.
Yes.
But,
and that's exactly it. Like if you want to think of it as a wizard, like sitting there at the cauldron with the pot boiling and you're putting stuff in. When people say I'm a wizard coach, or he's a magician as a coach, or he's got the secret sauce, they think it's some fancy combination of ingredients that they don't know the ingredients, or they don't know the combination of how it's mixing and helping each other that's going into the pot. And they think that's what the wizard's doing. But real coaching is really nothing more than watching the water and when is it boiling. Are we turning the flame up or down? And to make it not boil, do we have to add more of something else into there just to affect the water temperature? That's as far as the wizardry go with coaching. It's, are we boiling too soon, or are we not boiling enough? That's all this is. You can take whatever ingredients you want as long as you're adding them at the right time.
100%. I can put a chicken breast on the frying pan and torch that thing, and I can serve it to you in 12 minutes if I have to. Here you go. Go hit some 400-meter repeats, a couple of long runs. Let's have you ready to race in 4 weeks. It's not going to be your best. Or I can put a chicken breast in the slow cooker, give it 12 hours, put a little sear on it at the end. It's going to be the best thing you've ever had, and it was worth the wait, right? It's the same thing.
Yep.
Same thing.
Yeah. Getting it to the correct internal temperature is not the whole assignment.
Correct. I'll eat
You
a
can get
hockey
it
puck.
there.
I'll eat a chicken breast hockey puck. Trust me, I will do that when needed.
I know your only requirement is that it scalds your mouth,
I do. My food must be hot. Yes.
but that's not coaching,
Did
right?
we? Is that because I've
Not
told you
just
that, or
about
is that because
reaching the
my
temperature.
wife has divulged that?
You.
Man, do I not like
Jess and I don't have a side conversation really. We don't really communicate much unless you're there.
one of my greatest life's pet peeves is food that's supposed to be hot that is just like less than hot. Ugh,
I know.
what a terrible thing
I
to
know
do
that
to
of
somebody.
everything I've ever done, nothing offends you more than when I come on here eating cold leftovers.
I honestly hate it. Hate is what's the word stronger than hate? That's how I feel about it.
I don't know.
You
Be loath, Kirk.
you eat cold pizza and I can hear the like sticky dough in your mouth and between your teeth and these microphones that pick up those type of noises, and it actually makes me nauseous because I know it's cold and there's like a piece of sausage in there that I want nothing to do with, and I just can't imagine. Gross.
You would have despised the burrito I made right before we started up.
Don't even tell me about it, and mostly because we got to start
Despised.
moving on with this thing. So,
All right. Well, I think we should wrap then. Let's not get on to the Norwegian method. We've talked about it
well,
a
why don't
ton.
we?
We did night
I got a
school.
buffer here. If we need to go another 15 minutes, I can do it.
Okay. Well, I would say that we may eventually look back at the Norwegian method of training the same way we're looking back on MAF or Daniels or any of these things and say, here were the main flaws that we didn't understand at the time. But as of right now, this is the most trendy style of training. It is considered the safest and most guaranteed route for long-term success out there right now, but it has a very clear set of rules and principles that must be followed to do it correctly. And there's really like three things you have to know. The first is everything, the main work, the vast majority of the main work centers around lactate threshold or slightly under or slightly over. That's where the lion's share of the work happens. And whether you're doing doubles or singles or triples, it doesn't matter. At least 2 out of every 3 workouts are centered around 45 to 60-minute race pace. That is premise number 1. Premise number 2 is that you are never tipping over in a workout. You are doing 7/10, 8/10 workouts. You are always rolling into the next workout and getting more and more and more. The frequency of workouts are higher. The duration of workouts is, in theory, a little shorter, and you just stack them and stack them and stack them. The third principle is that you must do high volume with this approach. In between, you're running a lot. And then the final piece is that the X day, the unscripted day, the unknowable day, unless we know who you are as an athlete and what your plan is, must balance out your equation. And that's really it. There's no 5 paces. There's no chart. There's no table. There's none of that. You really just have threshold, X day, volume, and frequency.
It's interesting to see how that, and I'm sure there's a whole season of fatigue in this guy's body and legs, but to see how the recent half marathon played out for Jakob Ingebrigtsen, and if you talk about the poster child or family, the Ingebrigtsen family, we can say safely that that's who you think. I mean, this is what you think of when you think of the Norwegian double threshold training. And it's interesting with the emphasis on threshold. That is very much in a half marathon wheelhouse, riding that line for an athlete who can race around an hour. And it's funny to see him sort of falter in what you would consider the bread and butter. And granted, he just raced what, a 1500 or how many days prior, the day prior to
the night before.
I mean, so there's plenty
of 3:30 the night before.
There's plenty of factors here that you can't point the finger. I just found there was some irony to it a little bit, being like, and he gave him credit. He was like, these guys are monsters. This long distance endurance racing is for the birds.
Yeah.
But he also was after I guess the morning after a night race previously. But the thing I like about this approach, and this is the same, this is why I feel strongly about MAF, and then let's say the double threshold training or just threshold training in general. There's a holding back principle, which I could have used so desperately for so many years. And you listen to all the best coaches in the world, the pro level, the collegiate powerhouse coaches. And the sentence I said about 90% of a coach's job is holding your athletes back. You'll watch videos of Jakob Ingebrigtsen or the Ingebrigtsens getting barked at too fast, slow down. How nice would it be for you folks at home if you're going to hit a quality session and somebody told you to slow down? Go a little easier.
Mhm.
Wouldn't that be nice? Not that the training is easy because you're exposed to it constantly. The volume overall and the exposure frequency is more than you're accustomed to, most likely. But there's this level of like, we're going to have it on race day and we haven't used the match you need yet. And so ideally it's a good program for building your foundation, building your ceiling at the same time, but also racing your way into the season and into shape. Your
Mhm.
races become what end up moving the needle just a little more on top of probably the best foundation you can build. So the double threshold method you can literally apply all year long through your racing season. You use your racing seasons as the big stimulus, the big swings that don't follow the script, right? And it's a good program to endure over a longer duration. And then I honestly think help you peak at the right time if you're frequently exposing yourself to races like the Ingebrigtsens are. You race every week in peak racing season the last 2 months, and voila, combine that with double threshold training and these big race efforts, and suddenly you're ready when it counts. I think there's some magic to
Yes.
that, but I think the frequent racing is actually part of it in this method to
Yes.
maximizing your PRs and your potential.
Yeah, because you never go to the well in the workouts, and
Correct.
the races are an important key to feeling that,
Correct.
working on that. And I would say math is also like this, where if you race a lot, math can make sense.
Mm.
If you're one of those people that races almost every weekend or every other weekend, math can make a ton of sense. It also makes sense for the ultra world. Absolutely makes sense. But this threshold training style makes sense if you want to race more often.
Mhm.
Part of it is that it pairs well. The other part is that it just allows you to. It allows you to race more because you're never worried about overtraining or burning out in terms of too much intensity. Did I time it right? There's no timing it right. You
Mhm.
spend all year in threshold, and then this was, the real reason Jakob, I believe, couldn't run a good half is because he just spent like 9 weeks or 12 weeks prepping for the Olympic 1500, where he got away from this and got much more into
Mhm.
5K and below pace work.
Yeah.
So yeah, eventually you rode that down, but you can spend 90% of your year doing this thing and racing and not risk anything.
Mhm.
It's just a safe way. You stack up just hundreds and thousands of great stride reps at a pretty fast stride, but a constrained stride. So you're not crushing your legs either. So it's really about the keep things rolling approach. If you're a candidate for this if you always outwork yourself and get hurt.
Mm.
You're a candidate for this if you are underdeveloped aerobically, but you don't want to do math. You want to develop aerobically, but you need some intensity. You're a candidate for this if you love the long approach. This is a long game. This is not a get rich quick scheme. This is the long game, and you need to know that going in.
Right. Examples would be like you're taking a pace you could run for an hour and breaking it down into 6-minute intervals, let's call it, and repeating that. Like, of course, like I can finish that 6-minute interval pretty comfortably, knowing I could draw that out for another 54 if I had to, taking a short rest and rinse and
Mhm.
repeating. It minimizes damage. It maximizes time spent in a certain zone, we'll call it, and it keeps you fairly
Yes.
available. That's a thing where, like you say, double threshold training, like 2 threshold workouts in one day or frequent exposure. And a lot of people are like, God, that sounds very intimidating. But what you're not maybe taking into consideration is when you think of a quality day, you go to the track and thrash yourself and then say, there's no way I could do another PM quality session. Well, imagine if you held back and you worked at a 6.5 or a 7 out of 10 in that morning track session. If you had to, could you go back again and do another one in the afternoon and get great volume and great benefit from it? Yes. And I think it's reframing that if you're not miserable, it's not effective. And I think I don't
Mhm.
hear you have like, and don't get me wrong, the volume of the threshold work can be very fatiguing over time, but I don't hear you like I've expressed a couple of like regrets or I wish I knew when I was younger in my development years. It's why I think I'm performing well in my 40s now as I finally clicked, right? Like harder isn't always better, shorter isn't always better, faster isn't always better, longer and sitting in it and all of those things. I don't hear you express that yourself as much. Like I wish I just had more of an aerobic development phase. That's all
I mean, I do.
you do.
I absolutely do. But I didn't train in the off season, so I couldn't have handled this in season. We went right to Jack Daniels or Frank Horwill style training, and it worked well because it got me fit quick.
Yep.
It was actually endurance training at the same time because I was doing long reps, but I didn't have off season training, so I didn't have base.
Because of other sports for
And
the
I
most part.
Yeah. And so I couldn't even handle volume of training in college. So I got my training off intervals. But as a result, I was very underdeveloped aerobically, despite 4 years of college track. When I got to the trails in the OCR scene, it took me a long time to build up to the point. I don't know if I ever I never made a podium at a national series longer than probably 75 minutes.
Hmm.
Even the long supers, maybe 90. Probably New Jersey Super was the longest I ever did, but I never made a podium at a national series beast. Sprints and supers, sure. Never at a beast distance. I don't know if I even won a beast outside of Hawaii where no one was there. I don't think I ever won a beast distance even at the local.
Hmm.
It just didn't happen. So I don't know if I ever have. I know I haven't ever caught my aerobic system up to my anaerobic.
Hmm.
To this day, like right now, in this moment, I could go out and run a 4:30 mile in the fitness that I'm in right now, or a 2 to 2:03, 2 to 2:02 800 meter. I would be hard pressed to run 16:30 in a 5K right now.
Hmm.
Like it would take a race effort to do that, I think. So I still have a disparity. It would always be a chore for me to break 3 in a marathon. Always.
Yeah.
Even when I could, it would still be a chore. I couldn't just casually do it on a long run, but I could casually run a 4:40 mile or a 2:05 800 any day of the week because I have such a disparity. So I have those regrets, but I realized I wasn't even in a position to spend that
Yeah.
in high school or college.
That's fair. When we talk about the methods, and I very heavily gravitate towards these last two as far as like foundation and
For sure.
right.
If I could do it all over again, trust me, I would.
Mhm.
Absolutely, I would.
The bulk of your year is spent in one of the last two, MAF or threshold training, and then you filter in the other two as racing gets closer, and you rinse and repeat that cycle through perpetuity, which is what I've been doing for years. It took me forever to access it. You know, I can grind better than it took me. It took me 15 years to make up for it. And mostly I started really
Yeah.
racing again in my late 20s, early 30s. And I didn't find this until 33, 34. Started like just, hey, go longer, go grind it, go back off a little, stay available. And then I was like, oh my God, I took a minute off my 5K. How did that happen when I'm running slower and longer? Well, it's kind of how it works, folks. It's just interesting.
I think that if you start me from age 13 with an adapted version of the Norwegian approach, I am nowhere near the same athlete. That program was made to balance out my weaknesses. And for years, I worked on my strengths. But this is why it's important for us to understand what program are we choosing. I spent 4 years in college sharpening my sharp side. It wasn't going to get every single year I got to the same point. I'm as fast as I can be. I just can't sustain it any longer.
Yep.
Every single year for 4 years, banging my head against the wall. I sharpened the sharp side until it chipped and cracked. And my dull side was as dull as ever. I've said this on here before, but 1 or 2 weeks after nationals, my senior year, I ran a 16:29 5K and nearly lost my life doing it.
But you were running 152.
I was like 412, 153 800, like equivalent to 412 in the mile.
You should have been able to
in
jog
a 16:29 5K.
You should have been able to do that literally half asleep based on that.
I should have been able to do that in a workout and then run some quality work after.
Yes. That's so funny.
Pathetic. That's how underdeveloped I was. And so, of course,
that is our listener base, though.
Differently.
Almost everybody listening who finds this later is sort of in that boat, sort of. And underdeveloped might mean you didn't run until you were 35. Like, are you underdeveloped? Yeah, you're underdeveloped.
Right.
Even though you started correctly, you're underdeveloped. So you have to start with the basic principles to start with.
So I'm going to do one last to close this out. 357, 1500.
Okay.
414 mile. And the equivalent for a 5K is 1454. And I ran 16:29 in a kick finish where we were surging from like 800 out. I was racing this, Kirk. 1454 for a 5K.
You know what made me feel really good? I never took the time to do it to the VDOT, or any of these calculators. Is you asked me, you were talking me off the ledge. I wasn't on the ledge. That's dramatic. After my 5K and saying, well, guess what? If you run 15:26 in the 5K, which is what I ran, what does that equate to in a half
Mm-hmm.
marathon? And you said like 1:10:50, which is like 20 seconds off of what I ran my last half marathon. And I'm like, oh my God, my short speed is actually it's tracking with my longer distance racing
Right.
for the first time in my life. And it's probably just age, but whatever. We don't have to deal with that detail. What are you looking at here?
I'm gonna do it then for my 800 just because I'm curious, but we can wrap this thing up
Okay, do it.
because that was probably ahead of my mile because I was underdeveloped aerobically. I couldn't max out my mile. So that would tell me that my 5K was a 14:31 equivalent. So already from the 800 through the mile, my 5K changed by 13 seconds in the projection.
I know, but the flaw in that is like if you're like a 45-second quarter miler, it tells you should run a marathon in like 1:57.
Correct.
It doesn't work that way, but it's just fun. It becomes
No.
more accurate the
It's
tighter
the
the window.
equivalent.
Right. It's the equivalent.
Right. But still, like to this day, my 5K PR is 15:42, which is a minute and 10 seconds slower than what it says my mile predicted I should be able to get to.
Sure. But
minute 10, yeah.
But you could
70 seconds slower than my equivalent performance.
You could reverse that. Okay. Well, I way outkicked my coverage on the short stuff too. You could reverse.
Correct.
You could reverse the way you jig the formula and then feel like the man. But we're talking about aerobic foundation here, so we have to use it the way you use it. Yes.
So my point of this is not to like glamorize or denigrate my running. It's to show you that when you choose programs, you don't want to do the thing that strokes your ego. You don't want to choose a plan that only works on the thing you're already good at. You want to choose a plan that balances your equation as a runner. And if you don't know what your equation is, then you start with like a MAF or a Norwegian approach, and it very quickly is going to tell you, am I a slow twitch or a fast twitch runner? Am I anaerobically strong or aerobically strong? And then you get to move anywhere you want from that. But don't choose something because it worked for someone else. Because I had teammates run like 14:20 off the training we were doing. And they would say, this is great 5K training. And I looked at it and said, this is horrendous 5K training. You can't do what works for others. You have to do what works for you. So choose your plans accordingly.
Choose all of them and choose none of them all at the same time in different times. How's that for being confusing?
Perfect. That's training.
That's training. I think all of these are the correct style for you listening at different phases in your season, at different phases in your career, at different phases of your development. I think it really comes down like, I don't think there is one way or the highway for most. And even if you looked at something like the Norwegian method, but then you talk about the racing season, they're dipping into other styles of training when they're in the heart of their racing season, but the bulk of their year is spent in the double threshold phase. And then of course they overspeed train at times. And of course, racing is a stimulus that is way beyond the double threshold. So they're implementing other more intense styles, 2 deviations below race pace or at race pace work. And so like, one way isn't the only way. There's periods of time you should maybe follow one or follow the other, but really you just need to figure out where they need to be plugged into the recipe to make the perfect meal, right? And so like, but I think experimenting is probably going to be the only way to do it, huh? You can't make a blanket statement saying this is for you and this is for you and that's for you.
No.
Yeah.
No, you can't.
Do you have one, if you said, and then I have a 3 minutes and then that's my end max window. If you said, okay, I have to commit to one for the rest of my life, there is no deviating from a way, which one would you pick?
For me, it'd be the threshold style because you get that X day, which we didn't talk about, but it's your other stimulus day. For them, they're running 20 by 200 meters uphill,
right?
Fast. For someone else, it's a hybrid fitness day, or it's a big hill workout day, or it's speed intervals. That's your way to balance it out. But
how often is that X day? By the way, I don't know.
Once a week.
They get it once a week. I thought it was
spread out once a week, but you could turn this into a 9-day,
right?
Very easily.
Yeah. I agree. I would pick the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's safe, and then you could modify up. What you don't want to have to do is modify backwards. You don't want to have to take pieces out. You want to be able to add pieces in, and that's what threshold training allows you to do.
Yep. Is that the bow tie on this thing? Do we not need
bow tie?
All right, shall we wrap it?
Apparently, just shouting out bow tie wraps it up.
Cue the music, please.